What? Why? Like, don't do that. I cannot stress this enough to any brand owners out there, and I actually want this clipped. Keep it simple. It sounds quite exploitative, this, but it's true. Focusing on older audiences.
From your experience over the last 5 years, what's 1 or 2 things that a founder should be doing throughout July and August, specifically for growth during Black Friday? If I was listening to you saying know your numbers right now, I'd be going, oh my God, what are you talking about? I can't do that. I'd be so stressed. What's kind of like any little tips or tricks that you could pass on to someone on actually getting that deep dive? Is it using something like Claude? Oh, but I had really low revenue months, and when we looked into the data, we went, you had no stock.
Yeah.
There was nothing to sell.
You had to get that in there, didn't you? I do know the actual term for it.
I know the term, by the way. I do know it. I've seen them in Tesco. Welcome back to Generate Growth, the podcast where we talk all things ecom, growth and marketing. Today's another exciting one, or maybe not to some people, but we're going to be speaking about Q4 prep.
Yeah, Q4 prep so early on in the year as well that people are like, how's it? It's almost like Christmas for parents, isn't it? Like, how's this come around so quickly
No, because
again?
Black Friday hits, and then December hits, and then we're talking about post Black Friday, and then January is still kind of post Black Friday. I feel like we have like 2 months off. I
think it's longer because you start like doing things in October to prep for it. Like realistically, I mean, the planning starts way before that, but like you start like warming up in October, and then you have like the Black Friday weekend. I think is only like a small part of the entire puzzle, and it goes on right through, I would say, to around Valentine's Day, because you've got that like, you can have a lull during January. I mean, I know that in the podcast this year we spoke about how we actually had a really extraordinary January, and it's because we put plans in place. But that goes to show how long Black Friday goes into place, because then you can start to do really rigorous revenue targets during January to make sure that everything's in expectation and like alignment.
Absolutely. I think for us, there's a lot of work that goes into it, obviously, because we're supporting other brands with their progression. But I think a lot of brands say we'll prep early, and then back end of September hits and they're like, oh, I've not done anything. I'm really stressed.
So many moving parts already.
Obviously today we want to speak about the kind of unsexy prep that helps to bring that calm. So what would you say is like the biggest misconception about Q4 prep?
I think the biggest misconception is that you need a high volume of things like creative. I think if you're working with a really good agency, or like, when I say creative, I mean like UGC specifically. When you're working with a good agency, it doesn't necessarily mean volume of so many different creators and so many different hooks and so many different angles. That's a lot of the work that the agency can do. So creative volume 100% is one, and putting a lot of time into that. When actually what you need is a really good offer communicated really clearly. And if you've got a product that needs a demonstration for it, then social proofing. And you really need those clear, specific content buckets so that you're making specific content for specific reasons and to communicate into specific parts of your funnels. Versus just overwhelming yourself and going, this is the time where we just need to throw loads of content at it and see what sticks. It needs an approach which is very valuable.
Yeah, and then there's the inventory prep, the email prep, we spoke about that in our last episode, making sure everything, all cylinders are firing and you know that everything is prepared and ready to go, as opposed to just hoping it sticks. Yeah,
I think like I touch on content specifically because it's become so aggressive how important it is to have really good content in the e-com space, and it's so expensive. With email prep, like you can do it in a tight turnaround and it'll be like one of those things that you can potentially just throw together and it won't land as well, so you'll lose money, but up front the cost doesn't change, right? And it's the same with your inventory prep. You may run out of stock during Black Friday because of poor planning, but you're not, and you'll lose money for that reason, but you're not like, it's not like that immediate loss of cash up front to invest into something else. I think content is one of the biggest ones where people overspend and over expect it to perform, when actually what you need is a solid system to get the most out of the content that you're already creating during that period. We've had Black Fridays where the client has been running around that much in circles that they forgot to make specific Black Friday prompts or specific Christmas themed stuff around gifting, and we've managed to take existing performing content, be able to put a really good overlay on it, and before you know it, you already know it works and it's converting a lot better.
Yeah.
So when I noticed that like people like over exacerbate on one side of things, content is a huge one you can invest in up front and get it really wrong.
Yeah. If you could advise someone then in July and August to start prepping, what things would you be telling them to prep?
The first fundamental one is knowing what number you want to achieve during that period, breaking it down by the month, breaking it down by the week. That's very important. And understanding your lean, reading the data of the previous years. Is what you're forecasting going to be realistic? On top of that, how much spend you're going to put towards getting that goal, how much you can afford to spend outside of your ad budget to get to that goal, and not really playing on a whim, trying to plan things like PR in advance, where you're going to be featured, how much impact that's going to be having, and really understanding your marketing mix and the overall experience that's going to bring it to your bottom line. And then on top of that, then building that into a retention strategy as well. So you've got all these amazing new customers during Black Friday. It's a great time to poach customers because, people come a bit promiscuous when they see a competitor with maybe a higher percentage discount off during that period.
Absolutely.
Then it's what are you going to be doing for your email marketing post that period to get people coming back again and again and again and keeping them loyal to your brand and not your competitors.
Absolutely. So that's kind of like your priority in July, August.
Yeah.
With that already in place, what would like September look like? How do you think a brand should deep dive?
Yes, that's when I'd start testing and really fundamentally looking at and putting my feet to the fire of what I predicted. So I'd used a September revenue target based on my year-on-year growth, how my percentage was split on the previous, period. Was, Google attributing 30% to my sales, Meta maybe 10%, email maybe 30%. Is this all tracking well and still aligned? And of course, we use Triple World, a third-party tracking software, to be able to have a much more accurate prediction on what that is going to bake into the bottom line. But once you've got those figures of your ad dependency, your email dependency, your year-on-year growth, and looking at that and actually split testing it during that September period, you're getting a flavour then. Is this right? Have I got my numbers right? Am I going into that period underestimate myself, overestimate myself? Do I need to change something up? And I think ultimately that is when you start to understand whether you're going to hit or miss target based on the numbers that you've initially done. It's also a time to think, have I got enough stock? It might be that you're ahead of what you were expecting, or maybe there's an unexpected trend that's hit, so another product's come into the limelight in your store that's really taking precedent. I start to take stock on stuff that you want to get rid of, inventory-wise as well, because then you can build that into a solid...
It's a great opportunity.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. You can be dynamic with the plan that you go into that weekend with, to do things like flash sales on specific product lines, for example. So all those things ultimately is what I'd be looking at on September, but that is really starting to be the litmus test of, is this going to work or not?
Yeah, and I think a lot of people don't realise the importance of this prep as well, but fundamentally it can lead to a loss in revenue. I
think something that's important in September as well, and a lot of people don't anticipate this as something that changes up for them, is that people go back to school. Kids go back to school. Kids go back to college, university, things like that. Now, you might not think that as a micro factor has an impact on everything, but it has a huge macro factor. What you're talking about is more parents with free time.
Yep.
Younger audiences maybe a little bit more distracted during this period.
Yeah.
People are gearing up. You've got those early shopper mentality kicking into place of Christmas is approaching. How do you start to speak to those people? So again, splitting your personas into different content buckets, going back to my original point of how you're going to speak to those different people during this period, is so important, because you can host things like back to school sale where you can test your Black Friday strategy, for example, and then ultimately that'll then reflect on, is my offer resonating with the audience? Because a lot of people come up with wild and weird offers during this period when I say just keep it simple.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of like what I mean about like specific macro factors changing, the weather starts to change, things like that. You really need to get your messaging and your content right for that period.
Yeah, I think another thing that we've seen kind of lead to a lot of revenue loss for clients is poor discounting strategies. And by that, I mean discounting too early.
Discounting, like, I will. 5 years now we've been at this. 5 Black Fridays. Longer actually, because I was freelancer before this. I cannot stress this enough to any brand owners out there, and I actually want this clipped for social media to try and get some money pushed behind it so brand owners are aware of it. Keep it simple. The amount of times that I've seen clients panic and start their Black Friday strategy early and have the entire month focusing on Black Friday because their competitors are doing it, and you've just slashed your margins only to see an uptick in the weekend anyway, but actually you've lost that momentum where you could have had an even bigger uptick because people were waiting, and you're putting a little bit of scarcity on the weekend is wild, especially in the beauty space. It's wild. People just start to go, oh, they've announced theirs, I'm going to do mine now. And it's like, what? Why? Like, don't do that. No matter the year, I've always seen that the weekend still has an impact. If you launch early, and we're all consumers here, we know this, you are still thinking they're going to do something that weekend. So you pause and think about it anyway.
Absolutely.
You go, yeah, they're offering 30% off now, but they're going to offer 40% on Black Friday. I know it. And even if they don't, then what you're doing is you're preparing your customer for disappointment almost. So I think even if you do like put the whole month into, you know, a discount, still have something special planned for that weekend. Because even the brands that don't run discount during this period, of course, they have lower revenue, and we're watching that quite closely. But the communication during that period comes to, this might not be here by the time Black Friday hits. We might sell out of this product. So, you know, if you're really wanting to get this for Christmas, let's you know, get a shuffle on. And actually, it sounds quite exploitative, this, but it's true. Focusing on older audiences during that period is so important as well, because they're not as accustomed to the Black Friday kind of wildness, if you like, and they've not really caught onto it because it is an American thing, especially in the UK, and it's not like as big here. So focusing on like an older audience outside of the Black Friday window to kind of try and get conversions, and specifically talking about that prep for the Christmas period, it can yield really good results.
Yeah, I think ironically that horror film Thanksgiving is actually a really, really great example of Black Friday. Like, the film starts and you've got this huge crowd of people who are all very, very aware of what Black Friday is, basically creating a riot in a supermarket, and it all turns west because it's a horror film and it's a rated 18 horror film as well. And a lot of people get hurt. And fundamentally, the people that weren't anticipating that are the ones that kind of get left behind. So the people that are after those discounts might not get them. You know, if you're offering those discounts at the start of November, you've got your riot already waiting outside. And the people that are just waiting until Black Friday might not catch up. So
the point I raise about like customers flirting with other brands during that period, that is a huge one to be aware of, because yes, it's a great time for you to gain new customers, but it's also a really good time for your competitors to gain new customers as well. So if they're holding steady and true to what they want to be doing, there's every chance that they could pinch your customers during that period. If they're offering, they might have measured you up the entire month and been like, I understand that they're going to be offering 30, 40, 50% off. Let's do 60 then. And you'll see those discount shoppers flood to those over like your brand in particular. So it's a very interesting game to play, but I think ultimately getting your strategy right to begin with, sticking to it, staying strong, and staying as close to your numbers that you know you want to achieve, and tying back to the previous episode and building out your why on what you want to achieve that is so important.
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? If you're giving away to all your competitors as well what you're about to do by starting it in November the 1st, and they've got all of November to prep and change their strategy, you've kind of just given away a lot of your customers. And
the thing about that is you can go into Black Friday with one or two things. I want to gain a load of new customers here, and I want to make a fuck ton of money, and I want this period to be like known as the period where I make my money so I can reinvest for the next year. Or it can be a time where you maybe soften your profitability a little bit much. a little bit, but you're gaining those new customers to retarget them through the next year and have a really, so it's basically an acquisition period, so you can lose a bit of cash out because you know that you're that planned that you've got the rest of 2027 to reconvert them into, you know, different types of customers or cross-sell them and upsell them. Knowing which one you want to be is so important because a lot of brands get that bit wrong of the puzzle as well. It'll be, we want to make as much profit as we can and we want to be aggressive with a new customer acquisition, but we don't know what we're doing next after that.
Yeah.
And actually it's two kind of split goals. During this period, we see rises in costs like CPMs. We can sometimes see rises in like new customer acquisition costs because it's become so competitive. So what are you going to do with that information? Is it that you don't really mind the new customer churn, like, and you're just trying to grab them cheap and quick to get that cash injection so that you can then go and invest into a new product range, for example, to launch? Or is it that you really want to nurture during this period and grabbing maybe not those people that are highly like focused on a discount, maybe they're not really focused on that as a strategy, but they want to really buy into you as a brand and you want to get them returning time and time again. Two different strategies, but people blend them into one.
Yeah. So that's obviously where money's being lost, right, for these clients. What does calm scaling look like during Q4 then?
I think it's a nice mix of, like, calm scaling is the nice mix of knowing when you can test and knowing when to double down on what works. So really understanding the percentage value that you attach to each of those. So during Black Friday weekend is not a time to test. It's a time to double down on what you know has worked to try and get as much money under your belt as possible, in my opinion. Whereas outside of that scope, it might be that you want to be focused on testing on how you can acquire new customers for cheaper, or getting your existing customers to convert outside of just that one purchase that they might have been sitting on the entire year. So looking at your email strategy, for example, but really assigning a budget and understanding to each of those kind of percentages, if you like, to then go into this period with confidence. Never stop testing is my key kind of information to get across in this point, because yes, during that weekend you could take 4 days off, but I still would have like an outlier ad set, ad group, whatever that looks like inside of your accounts, where you're testing specific concepts or specific angles, because you just might not know what comes across and you might not know what resonates with the audience. So yeah, I think understanding the difference between testing and doubling down is fundamentally important for the calm scale.
From your experience over the last 5 years, what's one or two things that a founder should be doing throughout July and August, specifically for growth during Black Friday?
Throughout July and August, it's definitely knowing your numbers and doubling down on what inventory you want to sell and the angles that you're going to take during that key period. Because ultimately that is really the driver for the rest of that period of growth. So without knowing fundamentally what your numbers are, you can't move forward. And then I think I mentioned this earlier, but really doubling down on who you trust, getting your team in place and understanding the roles that they're going to take during that period to be able to scale efficiently.
In terms of numbers, do you mean everything? Do you mean like a promo calendar, so having those discounts set out, like the guardrails, your margins, your inventory? Is that kind of everything? Yeah,
use this time to get your admin in check, because I think ultimately that's one of the things that once you've got nailed down, you can't fail. Like it's that classic, I'm probably going to butcher it, but it's that classic saying of failure to plan is planning to fail. Because you don't know what to expect. And the worst thing could happen is that you have an amazing Black Friday, but you've run out of stock, so you can't captivate on it more, or you upfront your costs and you buy a load of stock that isn't going to sell because you've not done the research in your own product and what's selling. And that's become even more accessible now that we've got things like Claude, ChatGPT, because you can literally tell it to go and read this data for you and give you a game plan based on it, and get it to do things like deep dive research on what's worked previously, and really read your analytics to get to where you need to be.
Yeah, so I'm I hate numbers. I'm such an anti-numbers person. So if I was listening to you saying know your numbers right now, I'd be going, oh my God, what are you talking about? I can't do that. I'd be so stressed. What's kind of like any little tips or tricks that you could pass on to someone on actually getting that deep dive? Is it using something like Claude? Or
I think it is.
ChatGPT?
If you sat here a year ago, it would have been like getting a good FD in place and get them really reading everything and get.
Yeah.
It doesn't even have to be an FD. It has to be an accountant, someone that can hold you responsible and understand the figures behind your business. But now you like, especially Claude, because ChatGPT does lean on the side of like that positive thinking and that positive mindset kind of like built into it. But Claude is so powerful for being able to do data reading. And at this time of recording this podcast, we're flirting with the idea of Fable being launched inside of Claude, which is going to be insane for data analysis. Mm-hmm. So there's nothing without a good prompt set that you can't build and understand where your opportunities and potentially where you need to be a little bit realistic can be like actually built into it. But huge caveat, it is AI. It is data reading. Yeah. It doesn't have the finger of on the pulse of your business and what you understand and know about it as well. So even if you hate numbers, unfortunately, you are in business and you're going to need to know the fundamentals or you're going to go kaput, Yeah. So it's trusting yourself to read the information, digest the information and fully make an informed decision on the back of that.
Yeah. Or if you feel unable to, pay someone to do it.
Yeah, 100%. This is what I'm saying always. I think I said it in the last episode. I'll probably say it in a lot of these episodes is that if you don't know something, pay someone to do it 10 times better than you ever could.
Yeah.
Because all you're doing is standing in your own way of growth.
Yeah. I mean, the ROI on paying someone to help you budget and get all your numbers is going to be phenomenal anyway. Because if you can't do that by yourself, there's your leaky bucket. Exactly. What we were speaking about in the last episode. And that is something that needs to be addressed. And I think all of this, it does feel boring. It feels unsexy. Looking at those numbers when you want to be looking at the profit it's like the lowest down on thing on your list, isn't it? But fundamentally, that boring prep work is what makes Q4 work.
Yeah.
And really, really work. If you're looking for a really, really good return on Q4 and you're hoping that an agency can do it for you, but you've not looked at your stock numbers, you've not looked at the assets that you're going to be providing the agency, then you've almost already set yourself up for failure during that period.
Yeah, I have this conversation in a lot of discovery calls when they don't quite know, they can't be confident sharing certain information with me. I'm like, you need to go and do your homework because I know which finger is going to be pointing in which direction when this goes wrong. And ultimately making sure that your agency is holding you as accountable as well, because if they need that information to get you scaling and growing in the right direction, then they really should be asking for it.
Absolutely. I mean, we've had this issue with a client, an ex-client this week, haven't we, who was unfortunately a non-paying client.
Yeah.
They had 4 months with another agency who was giving them zero information on their stock levels and wasn't kind of collaborating with them on that, or vice versa. We're not quite sure of that. And then they came to us and said, oh, but I had really low revenue months. And when we looked into the data, we went, you had no stock.
Yeah.
There was nothing to sell.
We were working with nothing.
And we had phenomenal ROAS. The ads were performing the best that they ever had performed for that client, but they didn't have stock. So
it was a lower spend. So in turn meant lower revenue.
Yeah.
But not knowing that fundamental, again, just damages and sours the relationship, which is why it's so important in the offset to get on the right page.
Absolutely.
In some cases, you're not even reading the right book.
Mm-hmm. So that's the boring prep work, isn't it, really?
It's the boring prep work, but you won't be saying it's boring when you've got those dollars chinging into your account.
None of it's boring when you're on a yacht with a big bottle of a magnum of champagne, is it?
Yeah, magnum. You had to get that in there, didn't you? I do know the actual term for it.
I know the term, by the way. I do know it. I've seen them in Tesco. Amazing. So obviously that was a lot on the unsexy work for July and August on Black Friday. In our next episode, we're going to be diving into discounting more. So building those promos and actually protecting your margins. So that should be an exciting one.
Yeah, I think it's all about that calculation. So anyone that hates numbers, as you've been mentioning throughout this podcast, is probably going to tune out pretty much instantly.
Bye. Sign up the way that we sign up, Team Me.
Let's do it.
You said this was going to be a lot of numbers, so I'm still debating whether I want to be here right now.
When we speak about stress discounting, I understand that when things go wrong, you want to make them right again. Doing that in a way that doesn't then fit into another strategy is where it goes wrong. And I think that's so fundamentally important to have this conversation around, is when things do go wrong, yes, be dynamic. But be dynamic in a way that's not going to sabotage your overall goal. Again, I'm like, ugh.
Having that plan in place, knowing your customer, and do you want to say it? Knowing your
numbers.
Ooh.